The wind carried dust across the dry plain. It was near sunset when Silas Greeley saw something strange near his gate, a shape too still to be animal. He rode closer, rifle across his saddle. She was tied to a fence post, her head slumped forward, long black hair stiff with dried blood. Her arms hung limp, wrists raw where the rope had bitten deep. Her dress Apache made was torn in places, stained with sweat and red dirt. She looked no older than 16. Silas stepped down, heart tight. He hadn't spoken to a soul in days. Was this bait? A trap? But she was barely breathing, chest rising slow and shallow. He touched her shoulder. No response. He put 2 fingers to her neck. They're faint. But there. A pulse. He pulled out his knife and cut the ropes. She sagged into his arms like nothing. Light as a scarecrow. Her skin burned with fever. Silas didn't think. He lifted her onto his horse and climbed up behind, keeping her close. The ranch was a short ride, but felt longer with that weight, not just her body, but whatever trouble came with it. He laid her on his bed and lit the lamp. Outside, the sky turned red. Inside, silence. Only her breathing, thin and ragged. He sat beside her, rifle across his lap, eyes on the door. Something had changed. Trouble had come to his doorstep, and this time, it wore a girl's face. The cabin was small. 1 room, 1 bed, 1 man. It had stood quiet for years. But now, it held 2 people, one half dead, the other wide awake with a rifle across his knees. Silas cleaned the girl's wounds by lamplight. He worked slow, careful. Her arms were cut, not from brush or falls straight. Thin cuts like someone had used a blade on her. A long gash across her forehead still leaked a little. He dabbed it with a cloth soaked in whiskey. She flinched but didn't wake. He'd seen hurt before bar fights, broken bones, men shot up bad. This was different. This was done on purpose. She stirred once, eyes cracking open just a bit. Brown, deep, but full of fear. She mumbled something not English. Apache, most likely. Her lips moved again. Quiet words. A voice weak and broken. Silas answered with what he had. "You're safe," he said. "Ain't nobody gonna touch you here." He doubted she understood. Still, the words felt necessary. Outside, the wind died. Too quiet. He stood, checked the door, then the windows. His ranch was open ground, no fences high enough to stop bullets. He'd lived alone so long, he'd nearly forgotten what danger looked like. Now it was back. And it had a face. Morning came slow. Before the sun was fully up, he heard hooves. 1 horse, then more. Dozens. He stepped to the window. They were there. Apaches. Too many to count. They weren't moving fast, just forming a wide circle, surrounding the house. Calm, quiet, waiting. He looked at the girl. Still breathing. Still asleep. She didn't know what was coming. Silas tightened his grip on the rifle. He didn't know what came next. But he knew this much: everything was about to change. They came like shadows on the sand. No war cries, no noise. Just the steady, quiet steps of horses forming a ring around Silas's cabin. From the window, he counted 20. Then 30. They kept coming. The girl stirred behind him. Silas turned. Her eyes opened, alert this time. She tried to sit up but winced. He helped her lean against the wall. She looked out the window. Her breath caught. "Father," she whispered. Silas looked at her, not understanding. She pointed again. "Father," she repeated. Then it clicked. This girl wasn't just Apache, she was someone's daughter. Someone important. Maybe a chief. And now, that chief was outside. Silas felt the air shift. He helped her stand. She limped to the window, one hand pressed to the glass. Her voice shook as she spoke in Apache, fast and sharp. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She was scared. Outside, the circle kept tightening. Men dismounted, took positions behind rocks, in the dry creek bed, along the ridges. Then the drumming started. Low, slow, like a warning, or a countdown. The girl grabbed his sleeve, speaking fast, pointing to herself, then to the warriors, then back to him. Silas shook his head. "I don't understand." She looked desperate. Then one rider moved ahead. Not old, not young. He rode close, just outside rifle range. "You have something that belongs to us," he called out in clear English. Silas didn't answer. The girl was trembling now. Her hand found the small pistol on the table. She checked it, knew what she was doing. Silas looked at her, injured, scared, and still ready to fight. The rider called again. "Send her out, white man, or we take her and leave your bones for the buzzards." Silas stepped back from the window. He opened the cabinet, pulled out his second rifle, and handed it to the girl. She nodded, quiet but steady. "Fight too," she said. Outside, the wind picked up. The standoff had begun. The rider gave no third warning, just sat still, waiting. His face was calm. His hands rested on the reins. But everything about him said violence was close. Silas kept his rifle lowered, but ready. Behind him, the girl Ayana, that was her name, was quiet now, watching. Her eyes flicked from the window to Silas, then back to the ridgeline. Then another figure appeared, older, still, heavy with authority. The drum stopped. Ayana's grip on Silas's arm tightened. She said one word, "Father." The old man raised his hand. 100 warriors stood still. Silas knew the type. Leader. Not just by title, by presence. He spoke. "White man," he said, his voice deep, accented, but strong. "I am Nalnish, war chief of the Kirikavwa Apache. The girl is my daughter. You will return her to me." Ayana called out to him in Apache. Her voice was rushed, urgent. Silas caught his own name in the stream of words. She was pleading, explaining. The chief didn't move. He listened, then nodded once. "She says you saved her," he said, eyes never leaving Silas. "Asked for nothing, expected nothing. I couldn't let her die," Silas said. "It was the right thing." The chief tilted his head. Most would not have done it. He dismounted, walked forward, slow, unarmed. "Come out," he said. "Bring her. We talk like men." Silas looked at Ayana. She nodded. He opened the door, stepped out, rifle held low. She followed, limping but upright. The chief saw her, and for just a moment, his face broke. Not much, but enough. Then he looked at Silas. Ayana spoke again, fast, direct. She pointed to the bandages, to the bed, then to the photo on Silas's table. The chief listened. "She says you gave her shelter, cleaned her wounds, slept in the chair, that you spoke kind words, though she couldn't understand." Silas nodded. "That's all true. Then I owe you a debt," the chief said. But others weren't so sure. One man rode forward, angry, arguing in Apache. The chief answered hard, but the challenger pushed back. Ayana leaned to Silas. "Takakota," she said, "war leader, under father. He says white man brings curse." The crowd was splitting. Some stood with the chief, some with Takakota. The tension hung in the air, thick and ready to snap. The storm hadn't passed. It had just changed shape. Takakota dismounted. His face was hard, eyes cold. He stepped close, speaking loud enough for all to hear. "White men lie. Today he helps. Tomorrow he brings soldiers." Ezra said nothing. The war leader pointed at him, then at Ayana, spoke fast and sharp in Apache. The crowd stirred. Chief Nalnish raised a hand for silence. "He believes mercy makes us weak," the chief said quietly. "That enemies will see this as softness." "What do you believe?" Ezra asked. Before the chief could answer, Takakota turned toward Ezra. "You bring danger," he said in broken English. "Better you die now, than no trail, no talk." Ayana stepped forward. Her voice rose, fast and pleading. She pointed to Ezra, to the scars on his hands. She said something about the photo on the table. The photo of Ezra's wife. Takakota listened. His jaw worked. Then he stepped back. He looked Ezra over. Slow, careful. His voice was flat. "She says you worked. Not take. She says you know loss." Ezra nodded. "I do." Takakota turned, spoke with the chief. The warriors around them began to relax slightly. "He will not challenge me," the chief said. "But he asks something else. A test." Ezra waited. "There are more men," the chief continued. "Men like those who hurt Ayana. Men who hunt women. We found signs, cages and wagons, waiting near Snake Creek. Ezra's voice was steady. You want my help? Takakota stepped in. If you mean what you say, if you are man of honor, you ride with us. Ezra looked around at the circle of warriors. His land was behind him. His quiet life, his fence, his fields. Then he looked at Ayana. Still healing. Still marked. How many more girls like her, he asked. Too many, the chief said. Ezra let the silence settle. My wife once said, he began, a man's worth is shown when nobody's watching. He turned to Takakota. I'll ride. The war leader studied him, then offered his hand. You ride as brother, he said. Apache brother. Ezra took it. The deal was made. No way back now. They rode out before noon. 30 riders. Ezra rode near the back, behind Takakota and Chief Nalnish. Ayana stayed with the women and younger scouts. Her strength was coming back, but she still moved with a limp. The desert stretched around them wide, silent, hot. The sun above was a hammer. No one spoke, not once. Hands gave signals. Eyes gave direction. It was a language of war. Ezra kept his eyes forward, rifle tied to his saddle. His horse, a big chestnut gelding, moved steady under him, though he wasn't used to this kind of riding. After 2 hours, they reached a dry ridge. Below, Snake Creek. Takakota raised his hand. Everyone stopped. Ezra dismounted with the others, crawled forward with Takakota and the chief to a narrow overlook. Below them was a clearing beside the dry creek. And the camp. 4 wagons, iron cages in the beds. Inside those cages, women, children, maybe 20 people total. Silent, staring, hollow-eyed. Around the camp, 15 armed men moved slow and lazy, confident, careless. Slavers, the kind who didn't care who bled as long as coin changed hands. Ezra's jaw tightened. Takakota whispered, we split. Half circle north. Make noise. Draw fire. The rest go south. Free cages. The chief looked at Ezra. Your choice. Fight or rescue. Ezra didn't hesitate. Rescue. Takakota gave a quick nod. Good. People first. They waited until the sun dropped low, light turning gold across the rocks. Then the signal came, a sharp bird call. From the north. The war cries broke. Gunfire followed, sharp and sudden. Ezra moved fast with the rescue group, down the slope, into shadow. He reached the first cage and saw 3 young women huddled inside. He smashed the lock with a rock once, twice then it gave. Go, he said. Run that way. He pointed to the ridge. The women hesitated, then ran. More cages. More captives. Each freed one faster than the last. Then shouting behind them. Slavers. 3 of them, rifles raised. Ezra fired once, dropped one. The others kept coming. Takakota appeared from nowhere, his rifle barked twice. Silence again. Ezra breathed hard. The battle was beginning to shift, and not everyone could run. Ezra lifted a young Mexican woman from the cage. She could barely stand. Her feet were torn, her eyes empty. He wrapped her arm over his shoulder and moved fast, ducking behind a wagon as bullets cracked through the air. Takakota shouted from behind a stack of crates. To the rocks! Get them out! More slavers were coming from the north side of camp, their surprise gone, but not their rage. Gunfire lit the dust. Ezra ran, carrying the woman. An Apache scout took her hand and led her uphill while Ezra turned back. 2 children were still in the last cage. A boy and girl, maybe 8 and 10. They clung to the bars. Ezra fired at the lock. It held. Another shot. It snapped. He pulled the door open. Come on, he said, voice flat but firm. The boy ran. The girl hesitated. Ezra reached in, lifted her with one arm, and ran. Behind him, a slaver stepped out with a shotgun. Ezra didn't stop. He turned sideways, shielding the girl. A shot rang out, but not from the shotgun. The slaver dropped. Ayana stood behind a barrel, small pistol smoking in her hand. Ezra didn't have time to speak. He nodded once. She nodded back. They got the last captives up the hill. Takakota and 3 others stayed low, firing cover shots. One was hit a graze to the leg, but he kept shooting. The fight didn't last long after that. The Apache were better, faster, smarter. By the time the dust settled, 15 slavers were dead. Not one escaped. The rescued sat in the shade, drinking water, silent in shock. Some wept. Others just stared. Ezra stood beside a wagon, hands on his knees, breath shaking. Chief Nal Nish walked up. "You fought well," he said simply. "Like Apache." Ezra nodded. "Not sure what that means yet. It means you didn't run when it mattered," the chief replied. Takakota joined them. His hand rested on Ezra's shoulder. "This cannot be undone," he said. "You are one of us now." Ezra looked around, at the freed people, at the Apache, at Ayana, who was helping a child wrap a bandage. He didn't speak, but inside, something shifted. A quiet life had died back at the ranch, and something new had begun. They rode back in silence. No songs, no speech, just hooves over dry stone, and the slow breath of horses. Ezra's shirt was torn. Dust covered his skin, blood not his stained one sleeve. But he didn't feel tired. Not yet. The sun dipped behind the mesas. Shadows stretched long. The air cooled. By nightfall, they reached the edge of the Apache camp. The rescued would be split among families, cared for, guided home. Some would need time. Others would never speak again. But they were alive. Chief Nal Nish dismounted and stood before Ezra. "You chose honor," he said. Ezra only nodded. Takakota stepped forward. He held something in his hand, a simple leather strap, decorated with carved bone. "An Apache bracelet. For you," he said. "From her." He pointed toward Ayana. She stood beside a wagon, her black hair loose in the wind. Ezra walked over. They didn't speak. She took his hand, fastened the bracelet herself, then looked up at him. Her eyes said more than words ever could. "Thank you. Goodbye. Be safe." Ezra touched her hand once, then turned away. He didn't belong here. At dawn, he rode alone, back across the desert, back to the quiet ranch. No fanfare, no trail of dust, just a man and a horse, and a sky that stretched forever. 3 days later, he sat on his porch. The photo of his wife sat on the table inside. Next to it, the bracelet. He picked it up once, rubbed the bone bead between his fingers, then set it back. Out in the field, the cattle moved slow. Life hadn't changed, but he had. He'd seen evil, faced it, fought it, and when it came again, and it would, he'd be ready. Ezra leaned back in his chair. The sun dropped behind the ridge. The last light caught the dust in gold streaks. For the first time in years, his heart felt steady. Not happy, but steady. In the Wild West, survival was everything. But honor, quiet, unseen, unpaid, was what made a man more than just alive. It made him human.